Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Sutriani. So today I'm going to explain about my answer from the question of mid-test, assessment, and evaluation subject. Okay, number 1. The question is explaining the differentiation about testing, assessing, and teaching. Okay, the first, it's about testing. Test is a method of measuring a person's ability, knowledge, or performance in a given domain. And the second is assessing. It's about assessing an ongoing process that includes a wider domain than a test. And the third is teaching. It's about teaching the process carried out certain activities about experience has shown to be effective in getting students to learn. So the difference is a test is a product about measure a particular behavior or test or objective, and manual assessing and teaching is seen as a procedure instead of product. Okay, number 2 is the question when the language assessment could be practicality, reliability, validity, authenticity, and was back. And my answer is for practicality, a test said to be practical when it's not expensive. And the next is tie within appropriate time constraints. And the third is it's relatively easy to administer. And the last is has a scoring and evaluation procedure that is specific and time efficient. For example, the teacher and student time constraints cause administrative details to some extent by what occurs before and after tests. And the next is for validity. For validity, by far the most complex criterion of an effective test, and arguably the most important principle is validity. The extent to which inferences made from assessment results are appropriate, meaningful, and useful in terms of the purpose of assessment. And how is the validity of tests established? There is no final absolute measure of validity, but several different kinds of evidence might be invoked in support. By this, we will look at these 5 types of evidence below. Number 1 is content-related evidence. If a test actually samples the subject matter about which conclusions are to be drawn, and if it requires the test taker to perform the behavior that is being measured, it can claim content-related evidence of validity, often popularly referred to as content validity. And the second is criteria on related evidence. Criteria-related evidence usually falls into one of 2 categories. The first is concurrent validity. In concurrent validity, a test has concurrent validity if its results are supported by other concurrent performance beyond as the assessment itself. For example, the validity of a high score on the final exam of foreign language course will be substantiated by actual proficiency in the language. And B, predictive validity. The predictive validity of an assessment becomes important in the case of placement tests, admission assessment, batteries language, aptitude tests, and the like. And the third is construct-related evidence. This one does not play a large role for classroom teachers. Construct might or might not be directly or empirically measured, then verification after records inferential data. And the fourth is consequential validity. Consequential validity encompasses all the consequences of the text, including such consideration as accuracy is a measuring intent criteria, its impact on the preparation of text takers, its effect on the learner, and the intended and unintended social consequences of text interpretation and use. And the five is face validity. For face validity refers to the degree to which a test looks right and appears to measure the knowledge or ability it claims to measure, based on the subjective judgment of the examiners who take it, the administrative personnel who decide on its use, and the psychometrically unsophisticated observers. Okay, next is reliability. For reliability, a reliable test is consistent and dependable. If you give the same test to the same student or math student on the two different acquisitions, the test should yield a similar result. The issue of reliability of a test may best be addressed by considering a number of factors that might contribute the unreliability of a test. And reliability, a test said to be reliable when a reliable test is consistent in its condition. And the second is give clear direction for scoring and evaluation. And the third is has uniform rubric for scoring. And the fourth is lends itself to consistent application of those rubrics by the score. A student-related reliability, the most common learner-related issue in reliability is caused by temporary illness, fatigue, anxiety, and other physical or psychological factors, which might make an observed score differ from one's true score. And the next is writer reliability. Human error, subjectivity, and bias may enter into the scoring process. Writer reliability issues are not limited to contexts where two or more scores are involved. Inter-writer reliability is common occurrence for classroom teacher because of unclear scoring criteria, fatigue, bias toward particular good and bad student, or simple carelessness. And the third, and the second, and the last is test administration reliability. And reliability may also result from the condition in which the test is administered. For example, in the administration of a test of oral comprehension in which a tape recorder played items for comprehension, but because of street noise outside the building, students sitting next to window could not hear the tape accurately. This was a clear case and unreliability caused by condition of the bad test administration. Okay, next is authenticity. Authenticity, a test said to be authentic when contain language that is natural as possible. And the second is has items that are contextual rather than isolated. The third is includes meaningful, relevant, interesting topics. And the next is provide some thematic organization to items. Over tasks that replicate read word the task. Okay, the last is was back. A was back a test said to be was back when positively influence what and how teacher teach. And the second is positively influence what and how learner learn. And the third is give learners feedback that enhance their language development. And the last is more formative in nature than summative. Okay, the third number 3. The question is how to design classroom language test. Okay, and my answer is in this chapter involve about how to the teacher draw foundation and tools to begin process of designing tests or revising existing tests. To begin the process, teachers need to ask some critical questions as follows. Number 1, the first question is designing of tests. Teachers should pay attention on what is the purpose of test. It needs reason why she are creating this test. Is it to evaluate of overall proficiency, to place students into a course, to measure achievement within a course? And the second question in designing test relates on what are the objectives of the test, and then what specifically is her trying to find out, and establishing appropriate objective involves number of issues ranging from relatively simple one to complex one in the text. And the third is the question of designing text. How will the test specification reflect both the purpose and objective? Teachers should make sure objectives are incorporated into a structure that appropriately weight the various competency being assessed. And the fourth is for the question, how will his test toss be selected and separate items arranged? From test toss, the student should achieve content validity by presenting thus the mirror, thus of course being assessing. And the fifth question, what kind of scoring, grading, and or feedback is expected? Thus are depending on the purpose. Okay, number 3, the question is how to design classroom language test. Okay, and my answer is in this chapter involve about how the teacher draw foundation and so begin the process of designing this test of revising existing tests. And number 1, the fourth question is designing of test. Teacher should pay attention on what in this purpose of test. It needs reason why she are creating this test. Is it to evaluate of overall proficiency, to place student into a course, to measure achievement within a course? And the second question in designing tests relate on what are the objectives of the test. What specifically is she trying to find out? Establishing appropriate objective involve a number of issues ranging from relatively simple one to complex one in the test. And the third question is of designing tests. How will the test specification reflect both the purpose and objective? Teacher should make sure objectives are incorporated into a structure that appropriately weight the various competencies being assessed. And the fourth question, how will the test be selected and separate items arranged? From test tasks, the student should achieve content validity by presenting tasks that mirror those of course being assessed. And the fifth question, What kind of scoring, grading, and or feedback is expected? Those are depending on their purpose. In this, there are two types tests. Of tests, the teacher will probably not have many opportunities to create as classroom teacher as follow. Number 1, language aptitude tests are designed to measure capacity or generally ability to learn a foreign language and ultimate success in that undertaking. Language aptitude tests are ostensibly designed to apply to the classroom learning of any language. Two standardized language aptitude tests have been used in the United States: the Modern Language Aptitude Test and Pimsleur Language Aptitude Battery. And there are, for example, the MEL-AT. For example, consists the different tasks such as number learning. Examine must learn a set of numbers through oral input and then discriminate different combinations of those numbers. B. Phonetic script. Examine must learn a set of correspondence between speech, sound, and phonetic symbol. And C. Spelling clues. Examine must read words that are spelled somewhat phonetically and then select from a list. In the list, one word was meaning in closest to this college word. And the word is sometimes examined are given a keyword in a sentence and are then asked to select a word in a second sentence that perform the same grammatically function as the keyword. And the two, proficiency test. Proficiency test has aimed to test global competence in a language. It's not limited to any one course, curriculum, or single skill in the language. Rather, it tests overall ability. Proficiency tests are almost always summative and non-reference. The profit results in the form of single score, which is sufficient result for the gatekeeping role to play and accepting or denying someone's passage into the next stage of a journey. A typical example of proficiency test in the test for English as foreign language or TOEFL. The TOEFL consists of sections on listening comprehension, structure, reading comprehension, and written expression. Other two types of tests above. There are three types of tests that need to create by teacher as follow. Number 1, placement tests are designed to place a student into a particular level or section of language curriculum or school. A placement test usually but not always include a sampling of the material to be conferred in the various courses in a curriculum. A student performance on the test should indicate the point at which the student will find material neither too easy nor too difficult but appropriately challenging. And the second is a diagnostic test, designed to diagnose specific aspects of a language. A test in pronunciation, for example, might diagnose the phonological features of English that are difficult for learners and should therefore become a part of curriculum. A diagnostic test should elicit information on what a student needs to work on in the future. And the third is achievement test is related directly to classroom lessons, unit or even total curriculum. Achievement tests are limited to particular material addressed in a curriculum within a particular time frame, and the offer after a course has focused on the objective in a question. Okay, I think And the next is number 4. Number 4, the question is how to construct a good test. Okay, and my answer is for construct a good test, number 1 is criteria. Criteria, whatever the case, a good test is one that correctly measures learning and accurately discriminates between those students who have mastered the content and required skill from those who have not. This could be achieved if each lesson undergoes thorough pre-screening by one trying to assess or validate individual questions in a lab as well as the overall exam. A test validity refers to how well it tests what is intended to test. This requires a moment of intense reflection and even introspection. A proper validation demands that the test covers the analysis, skills, and grammar. For example, they are covered in the course curriculum. A test that does not fairly do this is both unfair and fails to paint an accurate portrayal of what students have learned. And the second is potential pitfall. While writing a test item is relatively easy, constructing good test item requires technical knowledge of the principle of assessment. If not carefully constructed, test item would be exposed to several weaknesses that injure the overall validity and hence the usefulness of a test example. Poorly constructed true, false question of the first student to guess which fails to measure what learning has taken place. Similarly, a two-wordy test item measures reading ability, comprehension, instead of desired goal of measuring ability or skill. And the third is avoid ambiguity. As indicated by the above example, it is difficult to answer questions that are not clear in a meaning. Apart from causing frustration, they lead to multiple interpretation and difference in response. Vague items always fail to measure learning accurately. Hence, a good test item should be clearly stated. For example, for a true-false item, a teacher constructs the item people change in attempt to gauge if students had understood the concept that humans continue to grow physically with age. A better item who have been people change physically with age. And the 5 is keep it smile. In an attempt to impress supervisors, students, and parents, some teachers unknowingly ask difficult words in their test items. Unless is it a test to measure mastery of vocabulary taught during the course. Uncommon vocabulary should be avoided. Remember, a good test measures only what is supposed to measure, not anything else. Okay, there are for construct a good test. There are 5. The first is you must do attention from the criteria, and then the second is you must do potential pitfall, and the third is avoid ambiguity, and the fourth is keep it smile. I think enough from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.